Chapter 1. I lived in a gorgeous antebellum house, not too large, certainly not too small. The white columns out front were tasteful, even though they'd chipped in places. The porch was welcoming, if a little weathered. Over the years, my family had sold the estate around the house, piece by piece, like the sprawling peach orchard, and even the grand front drive had given way to tidy bungalows lining the long road to the main house. Grandma had said it made gossip travel even faster, the way they build houses so close together these days. I always told her that... Did you drop something? That the good citizens of Sugarland, Tennessee needed no help. Still, I love the place. And I absolutely despise letting it go. Anyone home? My best friend Laura Lee called from the front of the house. Verity, are you in here? She had a few knocks on the front door out of politeness rather than practicality, since the door already stood open. We'd endured a stifling hot afternoon, but I couldn't afford to run the air conditioning. I needed any breeze I could get. In the back parlor, I called. Morning, I added, since there was nothing left in the once stately room, save for a cooler filled with ice, my tea jug, and a lopsided futon I inherited from a roommate back at Ole Miss. The pink-papered walls and elegant wood accents appeared so strange without rugs and furniture, like a queen stripped of her jewels. It's a ghost story, by the way. Silly. The estate sale was yesterday, and the place had been picked clean. The vultures. I'm sorry, Laura Lee's voice echoed in the empty room. She let her purse and a cloth grocery sack slip from her shoulder to the floor. Then she wrapped an arm around me and squeezed the curled end of her ponytail tickling my cheek. I gazed up at the ugly black hole where the crystal chandelier had hung for more than 100 years. Thanks. I'd come to terms with this. I really had. I turned and looked her straight in the baby blues. I'd live in a paper bag if it meant I didn't have to marry that bastard. My friend drew back and tucked a lot of my hair behind my ear. Seems like he's trying to make you good on your word. True, but I'm not done yet. I refuse to even entertain the thought. That's how I feel about Election Day this year. Oh, God. This past May, I'd scandalized the town when I jilted the most eligible bachelor in 3 counties, at the altar no less. It was a disaster. 2 old ladies fainted straight out of the pew reserved for the Southern Heritage Club. Then Beau's own mother collapsed, taking down a lovely hydrangea arrangement. I secretly wondered if Mrs. Leland Herworth Waddell III didn't want to be upstaged even at her own son's ultimate humiliation. Truth was, he'd brought it upon himself, but I suppose it was quite shocking if you didn't know the details. I hadn't told a lot of people. I'd wanted to spare my sister. Laura Lee chewed on her lip as she surveyed what little remained in my home. Tell me you at least made some decent money yesterday. I did. I sold everything I could lay my hands on and kept only the absolute necessities, namely my futon, my grandmother's pearl wedding ring, and the quilt she'd made for me. It had hurt like a physical pain. I'd had to remind myself that it was only furniture, clothes, stuff. I still had my health and my friends, not to mention my family. I brought a hand to my throat where I used to wear my grandmother's cross from when she was about my age. The delicate gold and silver filigree antique now belonged to my not-quite mother-in-law. I still owe more than $20,000. I gazed across the once grand, now empty back parlor turned family room. I tried to ignore the hollow place in my stomach. Tomorrow, my ancestral home will go on the market. I let out a ragged sigh. It's dumb, but I keep hoping for a miracle. A hidden treasure in the attic, gold under the stairs. Stranger things had happened, right? All I knew is that I couldn't lose this house. I just couldn't. Laura Lee wrapped an arm around my shoulder and gave me a squeeze. You'll make it, you always do, she said, in a way that made me think she actually believed it. She took in the 14-foot ceilings, the crown moldings. With the money you have left over from the sale, you could make a fresh go of things. How do you start? I certainly needed something to change, and yet I can't believe it's all gone. What had taken more than a century to accumulate had become fractured history in the space of a day. Except for that, I said, pointing to a god-awful vase on the mantel vase. My friend made a face. I never even noticed that before. It would have been hard to ignore. It was in the attic, I explained, where it belongs. The green stones that circled the top were sort of pretty, but a crude hand-painted scene marred the copper exterior, and a healthy dent gouged the lower half. The dowdy old relic looked completely out of place on an ornate marble mantel with flowers and hummingbirds carved into the corners. Eek, Laura Lee crossed the room for a better look. She attempted to lift the monstrosity and then changed her mind. It was heavier than it looked, wider at the top and tapered down to a flared base at the bottom. In fact, it reminded me more of an antique Grecian urn. She turned to me. Is it a spittoon? I think it's a vase, I said, joining her. Bo gave it to me. He called it an historic heirloom. Looking back, I think he just needed to get rid of it. In the beginning of our relationship, Bo had given me heartfelt gifts. A pressed flower from the picnic we took on our first date, a little notebook with one of our private jokes written on the inside cover. Later, it was last-minute gas station flowers, and objects like this. It's hideous, Laura Lee said. A true monstrosity, I agreed, or else he would have let me return it when I gave him back the ring. You want it? I asked, turning the dented side toward her. My friend let out a snort. Not unless I can thunk your ex over the head with it. I shot her a conspiratorial grin. You'd do that for me? She raised her delicate brows. Nothing would give me more pleasure, she said in a sweet southern tone that would make you think I'd offered mint juleps on the veranda. Suppose I could toss it, I said. I still had one trash can left. She waved me off. Keep it out. It's a focal piece, the only one you have. Here. She scooted it over toward the pale shadow where my mother's crystal swan used to be. It'll draw people's eyes to the fireplace instead of that hideous futon. Way to remind me that I'm sleeping in the parlor. No way was I going to try dragging a futon up a flight of stairs. She crossed over to the opposite wall to retrieve her hemp grocery bag from the floor. Maybe this will help you forget, she said, holding up a bottle of Malbec. Mine, I said, on her in an instant. Although I'd have to tell her Bo took this somewhere. She handed me the bottle and the opener, then pulled out a pair of plastic wine glass tops from her bag. My kids use the bottoms to play flying saucer frisbee, but I didn't think you'd mind. I wound the opener into the cork. Who won? Who knows? She held out both glasses, and I poured. It was well past cocktail hour in the Old South. In fact, the sun was beginning to set. Should we retire to the floor? I asked, a bit punchy with the unreality of it all. Laura Lee handed me a glass. We might end up there anyway, she said as we both took a seat. I smelled lemon polish and old wood as I stretched my legs out over the floor I'd lovingly scrubbed. We leaned our backs against the plaster wall and sipped our wine as the shadows lengthened over the room. It wasn't like I had any lamps. You ever think what might have happened if I hadn't come back home? I asked her. I could have gone to the big city after graduating art school. My father died when I was in 5th grade. My mother long since remarried. My sister had bounced from college to college. I could have found a job at an advertising firm or at a large company with an in-house graphics department. I wouldn't have been around when Beauregard Buford Waddell decided it was time to take a wife. This place would have sat empty, but at least it would have stayed mine. You belong here, Verity, she said simply, as if it were the only truth. She had me pegged. I cherished this town and my home. There had been no other choice for me. Without my roots and my family's heritage, I'd be adrift. Grandma knew. It was why she left the house to me when she died. The rest of the estate went to my mother, who bought an RV and embraced adventure with my stepfather, and to my sister, who used her portion to pay for her various semesters abroad and half-finished degrees. But truly this place had been mine even before Grandma made it legal. I took an extra-large sip of wine as Laura Lee's phone chimed. She handed me her glass and pulled the smartphone from her back pocket. The glowing screen lit her pixie face, and what she saw made her frown. Trouble in paradise, I asked as she checked her text messages. The faint lines around her eyes crinkled at the corners, and she sighed. It's Big Tom. Tommy Jr. got his head stuck in the hallway banister again. I should have faked some sympathy, but it happened at least once a month. The kid was forever getting stuck in something. Did you have to leave? No, she took her wine back from me. Big Tom has it handled. She held her glass like a diva at a cocktail party. Heck, if I was home, I'd be calling him. He's better at prying the railings off. I tried to imagine it and failed. I'm starting to think you need the wine more than I do. She had 4 children under the age of 7, all boys. She gave me the old pish-posh as she leaned against the wall. It's the first 2 kids that get you. After that, you're broken in. I'd take her word for it. A beam of slanting sunlight caught the ugly vase and shone through the dust in the air around it in a way that reminded me of dozens of mini fireflies. The copper itself didn't gleam a bit. Oh my gosh, Laura Lee said, leaning forward, glass in hand. It's dirty, she said with relish. I saw the dust, I told her. I'd give it a good scrubbing before the open house tomorrow. But she was already halfway to her feet. No, the painting on it is dirty as in sexy time. No way, I said, practically leaping off the floor to get a look. It's so bad, it's brilliant, she laughed as I pulled the vase from the mantel. I don't know why I didn't notice it before. Now that I see it, I can't not see it. Where? I asked. Yes, there were some highly styled, almost Art Deco swirly bits. They were hard to make out. It looked like people dancing. Maybe. My friend rolled her eyes. Has it been that long since you got laid? I plead the 5th, I said as I carried the vase over to a beam of fading sunlight by the window. I traced a finger over the crude painting, then I saw it. A girl and a boy, and another boy. Now, how did that work? They're getting lucky, Laura Lee said, crowding me to get another look. It's a lucky vase. I stifled a snicker. Can you see Beau's mother displaying this in her parlor? Maybe she knows what the girl is doing with 2 boys. And I think there's a goat, Laura Lee added. No, I said, yanking it closer to see. Made you look, she laughed. Did she ever? Wait till the old biddies see this, I said, and they would. We'd have plenty of gawkers tomorrow. Laura Lee gave me a loving punch to the arm. You might have to point it out to them. They'll gasp and moan, but they'll secretly love it. My friend's phone chimed again. She looked, and this time her sigh was heavier. Rats. Trouble. She held up her phone to show me a text photo of her 5-year-old son, sitting next to a pile of debris, grinning. Hiram got hold of a screwdriver and took apart the hall clock while Tom was working on the banister. I'd better go. Typical day in the Clementine household. I folded her into a hug. Thanks for the support. She squeezed hard. Thanks for the laugh. She smiled as she pulled back. I love you, girlie. She tilted her chin down, and I, for one, am glad you came home. She was a true friend, and for that I was grateful. Me too. After she left, I took that vase off the mantel and traced my finger over it. Boy, girl, and that really could be a goat. I smiled to myself. Laura Lee was right. I would make it through this despite Beau and his mother and every damn one of them. I'd be strong, free. Maybe not quite as free as those happy fun time people painted on the vase, but I'd be a new woman all the same, my own woman. I wet the pad of my thumb and used it to wipe the dust from the rim. As I did, something shifted inside of it. Strange. I lifted the small bronze lid and saw at least 3 inches of dirt. Well, no wonder. Nobody had cleaned the thing or showed it any love in ages. No problem. I'd take it outside and rinse it down with the hose. I could turn the dented spot toward the wall, and this little piece of faded glory might pass for something worth buying. Now would also be a good time to track down Lucy. That sneaky little skunk would spend all night outside terrorizing the neighbors if I'd let her. I pushed past the screen door and saw she wasn't in her bed, out on our sprawling back porch. A walk down the steps showed she wasn't under her favorite apple tree either. Or, as she probably thought of it, the place where snacks dropped down from heaven. After a little bit of searching, I found Lucy catching the last bit of sun on the stone pavers lining the rose garden at the back of the house. As soon as she saw me, she rolled right off the paver and landed on her back in the grass. She gave a chipper, skunky grunt and waddled over to greet me. I loved the way she walked, with her head down and her little body churning with every step. It was the cutest thing ever. Hi, sweetie pie. I bent down on one knee to greet her. She thrust her entire snout into my palm and then turned her head for easy petting, making husky purr-like squawks. She had the softest little cheeks. I stroked her there, then down along the neck and between the ears in the way that made her right back leg twitch. You enjoying your last day at the house? An apartment just wasn't going to be the same for Lucy. I found a place that accepted exotic pets, but believe it or not, people around here held a certain bias against skunks. It wasn't enough that I'd had little Lucy's scent glands removed. They wanted her to stop being who she was. Poor baby. I'd have to make some readjustments as well after we moved. Our new home, the Regal Towers, is basically an old 6-family flat down by the railroad tracks. So close, in fact, that the windows rattled every time a train went by. The doors were made of plywood. I wasn't even sure that was legal, not that management cared. Morton Davis, slumlord extraordinaire, had offered to save it for me on account of the fact we'd attended grades K through 8 together at Stonewall Jackson Elementary. I knew it was available because no one else wanted it. There had to be a way out of this. Lucy snuggled up to me and tried to climb my leg to get closer. You want to help? I asked, making sure I reached clear of Lucy as I dumped the contents of the vase over Grandma's rose bushes. She gave a little pilot sniff and sneezed. You said it. The dirt was loose and dry, which I was glad to see. I'd heard that sort of thing was good for the roots. Certainly couldn't hurt. When the last of the fine dust had settled out of the air, I hosed out the vase and poured the water on the roses. They needed it. I'd been neglecting them lately. How do you like that? I asked. My climbing vines. A chilly breeze whipped straight at my spine and shot goosebumps down my arms. It startled me and I dropped the vase. Lucy darted away. Nice work, Butterfingers, I mumbled to myself, retrieving it. I spotted a stubborn patch of dirt down in the base and rinsed it out again, but the stuff wouldn't budge. The rose bushes shuddered. It had to be the wind, but this time I didn't feel it. For the first time, I felt uncomfortable in my grandmother's garden. It was a strange feeling and an unwelcome one at that. It's getting late, I told myself, as if that would explain it. Quick as I could, I reached for the rose snippers I kept under the hose. I cut a full red bloom with the stem as thick as my finger and popped it into the vase with a dash of water. Then I'd hurried back toward the house, careful not to spill a drop. Lucy, I called, half wondering if the skunk wasn't the source of the strange rustling in the rose bushes behind me. Come on, girl. She came running from her hiding place under the porch. Something had scared her, too. The house had never been what you'd call ordinary. We had fish in the pond, each one big as a cat. More often than not, I found fireflies in the attic. But this was unusual, even for my ancestral home. I didn't like it at all, especially when the windows rattled. What the hey, girl? I asked Lucy and myself. She turned around and headed back under the porch. Darn it all. She tended to snuggle under my covers at night. I didn't want her all dirty. You have no idea how hard it is to give a skunk a bath. A low creaking came from inside the house. The hair on my arm stood on end. Perhaps Lucy was the smart one after all. Unfortunately, there wasn't room under the porch for me. Instead, I took the steps slowly and crossed the threshold into the darkened kitchen. My eyes strained against the shadows. Not for the first time. I wished I'd kept at least one light. With shaking fingers, I lit the big orange 3-wick candle I'd been using for the last few days. The house stood still quiet as a grave, almost as if it were waiting. Is it you, Grandma? I asked on a whisper. Are you mad I'm selling? If she'd been watching down on me at all, and I knew she did, Grandma would understand I'd been given no choice in the matter. Oh, no, said a ghostly male voice. You're staying put, sweetheart. With shock and horror, I realized it was coming from the vase. I dropped it. The door slammed closed behind me. The bolt clicked, locking on its own as the vase spun and rattled to a stop on the floor. A chill swept the room. I retreated until my back hit solid wood. I'd never seen a ghost or heard a ghost, although I watched ghost adventures on television. I certainly believed in them, and sweet Jesus, I was trapped. I couldn't feel my fingers, or my limbs for that matter. My entire body had gone ice cold. What do you want? I asked, voice shaking. Seeing as I hadn't dropped dead on the spot from a heart attack, this had better well be my salvation. Why are you here? The voice laughed as if it were honest to God amused. I'm here because you chiseled me, princess. Chapter 2. I had no idea what that meant, but by his tone, I knew he wasn't about to thank me. I had to escape, run. But I couldn't go anywhere. A frigid chill radiated from the vase in front of me. I pressed against the locked door at my back, my skin slick with sweat and fear. I tried to stay calm, be rational, but there was no way I could reason my way out of this. Okay then, think. Grandma always said she talked to spirits, said it was a southern thing, but I'd certainly never seen her do it, or heard them answer. I blurted the first thing that came to mind. I'll return your vase to the Widdells tonight. You'll be there before you know it. Back to the grave, or at least back home. Isn't that what ghosts usually wanted? Do you have a cigarette with you?
Yeah.
Thank you. A blanket of fog, thank you, descended over me. My skin erupted with icy pinpricks. A disembodied voice spoke directly over my right ear. We got a bigger problem than that, babe. No, you've got a bigger problem. I screwed up my courage and forced my voice to steady. Leave, I commanded. I order you from this house, now. He chuckled, though, right next to my ear. Don't you think that's a little dramatic? Flames shot up from the candle next to me, from the fat candles by the stove, from my little tea lights on the windowsills. You think I'm dramatic? I choked. A specter shimmered into view directly in front of me. He appeared in black and white, but I could see through him. Almost. He wore a 1920s-style pinstripe suit coat with matching cuff trousers and a fat tie. His chest was level with my line of sight, which made him unnaturally tall. The blood froze in my veins as I forced myself to look up. He had a long face with a sharp nose, which made him appear utterly ruthless. He softened a bit when he let out a long sigh. I mashed my back flat against the locked door. He casually removed his white Panama hat, and I gasped at the neat round bullet hole in his forehead. He motioned toward it with one edge of the brim. Hard to miss, right? I didn't know what to say to that as he fingered the broad black band of his hat. Perhaps I'd take the polite approach and pretend I didn't notice the large hole placed squarely an inch above his eyes. I really had to stop staring. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? He asked, shooting me a scowl. For dumping my ashes out into your rose bushes. A new horror bubbled up inside me. Those were, oh my gosh, I had no idea. He cocked his head to the side. Are you sorry for trapping my spirit on your property? My throat went dry. Is that what I did? He thrust his hat on. This is worse than getting shot in the head, he grumbled. He began to pace. I stayed exactly where I was. I suppose you would know, I ventured. He reared back as if I'd slapped him. Is that supposed to be funny? No, never. Just terribly inconvenient. Didn't know what else to say. How does one have a polite conversation with someone so tragically deceased? He adjusted his shoulders and shoved them back. Nobody Bruno's with me, you hear? You know who I am. I'm Frankie the German. Men fear me. Women want me. I hated to get picky with the ghost who'd cornered me in my kitchen, but shouldn't you be in Chicago or something? Isn't that where the gangsters lived? He scoffed. Let the Italians have Chicago. The South belongs to the Germans, and the flipping harps, he reluctantly added. Who? I asked. The Irish, he groused. That sounds reasonable, I managed. I didn't know what to do. I was used to fainting widows and shrieking southern belles. Not real life, make that dead. Gangsters. He was a criminal. Someone had seen fit to shoot him between the eyes. For heaven's sake. I didn't know what this ghost was capable of. Obviously, he was used to violence. I shoved back my fear enough to ask, are you going to hurt me? He jerked his shoulders at the thought. I don't do damage to skirts, he snapped, as if the mere idea offended him. I wasn't sure I believed him. Listen, doll, Frankie said, his tone softening a hair. When your great-uncle so-and-so dies, there's a reason you scatter his ashes. You scatter, he said, making a motion like he was feeding birds or something. You let them catch the wind. You give the spirit freedom if he wants it. His voice grew tight. You don't dump them all in one spot. And then stop. And then stomp on them, he added, fingers clenching. I didn't stomp, I pointed out. He shot me a dirty look. You gotta move your rear and get those ashes out of the dirt. I can't, I said, wincing. I hope some into the ground. Oh man. He upped as if physics were a mere technicality. Well, unwholesome. I'm on you like a tick until you fix this. That was impossible. You don't understand. I'm sorry this happened, but there's nothing I can do about it now. I couldn't bend the laws of science and nature, not even for an angry ghost. You retreated to my grandmother's Oak Center Island. It was bolted down, or it would have been gone with the rest of the furniture. I got time. He said it like a threat, running a hand over the countertop, as if he could actually feel it. In fact, maybe he could. Yes, well, I don't. This house goes on sale tomorrow. A familiar knot tightened in my stomach. No doubt it would sell fast. He slammed a fist down onto the butcher block. You're not going to ground me here and then sell? I will unless I can find $20,000. By the end of the week, I snapped back. I'd asked my family, I'd asked my friends. Nobody could spare that much. We had a lot of pride down here in these parts, and it didn't always come with a lot of money. I'd even applied for a bank loan. They took one look at my student debt and turned me down. It was hopeless. The ghost crossed his arms over his chest. 20 grand, huh? Maybe now he'd see how impossible it was in Scram. My ex-fiance, who gave me your urn, by the way, sued me for that and a lot more after the incident. I crossed my arms over my chest. Although how Bo Waddell came across your urn and gave it to me as a gift to Rat, I'll never know. The gangster sat on my grandma's nice countertop, which would have earned him a whooping if either Grandma or Frankie were alive. I'm his great-great-uncle, he said, nonchalant. That explains a lot, I muttered. The gangster shot me a look. Damn, he must have done a number on you. He cornered my sister in the hallway outside the bridal suite after our rehearsal dinner. I'd invited her to stay with me in the bridal suite on the eve of my wedding. She left to grab a bottle of wine and come back in tears. He groped her, and he would have done a whole lot more if she hadn't kicked him in the balls. I like your sister, Frankie concluded. I snorted. I can't believe he managed to hide that side of himself until it was almost too late. When I confronted Bo, he tried to deny it. Then he said it was a mistake, that I'd have to deal. It wasn't as if I could call off the wedding. Little did he know. Frankie scooted to the edge of the counter. Now listen up, 'cause here's what we do, he said, clasping his hands in front of him, his elbows resting on his knees. What we do? I asked. I didn't recall teaming up with the dead gangster. Oh? He opened his hands. So you have ideas? No, I said grudgingly. He scratched at his long thin nose. Okay, here's the deal. Old Lady Hatcher's not so dearly departed husband came across some cash in 1965. He gave me a long look. It's more than you need. My spine stiffened. He was talking about saving my house. Whatever he was about to suggest couldn't be good. Did I dare? How'd the money come about? I absolutely refused to get involved in anything illegal. Frankie shrugged. He bet his entire mortgage payment on a long-shot horse. The damn thing won. He hid the money on his property, only he was an idiot and died right after he stashed it. I'd heard that last part of the story. Maisie Hatcher had dug up every tree, shrub, and flower patch in her backyard, looking for the fortune her husband hid. She swore there was money under one of the trees on her property. We thought she was crazy. The corner of his mouth turned up. It's not under a tree. It's hidden in a box with a tree carved on the top. Well, didn't that beat all? I strolled toward the ghost, feeling brave. Or maybe I need to show him that I wasn't as scared anymore. You'd think her husband could have left better directions. He shrugged. Oscar Hatcher was an asshole. Still is. I cocked my head. How do you know? He's behind you. The air left my body. I screeched and spun around fast, my heart jackhammering against my chest. I couldn't see anything in the dark. Where is he? Frank's chuckle behind me sounded like gravel over rocks. Your friend's right. You really are gullible. You're such a jerk. A chill washed over me as the sweat on my body cooled. I turned back to him. How long were you watching me? He didn't buckle under my stare. Don't flatter yourself. I spent most of my time picking up names at the cemetery or a tool around, see who's manifesting. He grinned. Those Johnny Rebs from the 12th Infantry throw a wicked poker game, and half of them don't know how to bluff. He stood taller. I did stick around for the sale. I can't believe that crappy lawn furniture went before I did. He'd succeeded in wigging me out on about 10 different levels, but now wasn't the time to think about it. I had needed to channel my inner Scarlett O'Hara. I'd asked for a miracle, and I'd gotten one, sort of. At least I'd been given one more chance with money that was more or less clean. Abandoned, at least. Okay, so we go to Macy Hatcher's house, I began. Wait, you can't leave here. He cocked his head. I can't if I'm with you. I stood surprised for a moment, and not in a good way. Okay, we'll leave. We'll talk to Maisie, I said, thinking it through. We certainly can't tell her you talked to Oscar. He popped down off the counter. Of course not. We sneak onto the property. We take the money. Simple. I flinched as if he'd struck me. I'm not going to rob her. Technically, it's not her money, the ghost pointed out. I disagreed. It was her husband's win, her property. The poor woman's been searching for that treasure going on 50 years. I'd met Macy several times through Grandma's church group, and I liked her. She's an eccentric and doesn't have a lot in the bank. Frankie rolled his eyes. Fine. We'll tell her you can dig up the cash if she gives you 80%. No, I said quickly. He crossed his arms over his chest. 60. Forget it. My eye caught the shadows of candles dancing on the wall. She might not even let us on her land. She's a recluse now. Frankie tossed up his arms. Then what the heck are you going to do? He stopped right in front of me. I stiffened my back and held my ground. I'm not going to take advantage of an old woman. I had my integrity and my pride, I thought for a moment. I'll sneak onto the property, but only because we don't have a choice. It was for Macy's own good. Then, if we find the money, we'll ask for a reward. Maybe Macy will feel generous. Oh, brother, he rolled his eyes. You need to be more ruthless if you want to keep this place. I was tempted to point out exactly what being ruthless had gotten him, but I resisted. I do just fine. He shook his head as if my mere presence amused him. It's amazing the world don't eat you alive. Sometimes it did, although I wasn't about to admit that to him, not now. Despite it all, I had to believe that honesty would be rewarded, that if I lived my life doing the right thing, good fortune would come back to me. The alternative was unthinkable. So, are we really going to do this? I asked, antsy down to my toes, trying to psych myself up. I'd never broken the law before, unless you counted a speeding ticket or two. At least I was dressed for adventure. I still had on my kid sneakers and a casual purple sundress from a steamy day of cleaning and loading boxes. I think it could actually work. I needed it to, desperately. An old woman would get her long-lost money, which would hopefully put her in a generous mood. And Frankie, well, he'd still be trapped in my rose bushes, but we couldn't fix everything. My plans always work, Frankie said, with the annoying self-assurance that had probably gotten him killed. Without meaning to, I glanced at his forehead, hidden by the brim of his Panama hat. He caught my gaze. Well, he corrected most of the time. I'd have to take his word for it. My nerves pulsed with excitement and something else, anticipation. I'd never done anything like this before, and I was surprised to find out I wasn't exactly opposed to it. If this is going to happen, it has to be tonight. Before the house showings tomorrow morning, before I had time to think about how crazy this sounded. It jumped as the back door clicked open. With a loud creak, it swung wide. Frankie adjusted his hat and gestured toward the door. After you, sweetheart. He lingered in the kitchen as I crossed out onto the porch. Aren't you forgetting something? I stopped and realized I'd breezed right by the vase I dropped on the floor. Urn, I corrected in my mind. Still couldn't believe I dumped out his urn. Slowly, I turned to face him. So you can't leave with me unless I have your urn? I was a little surprised at that. It wasn't like his ashes were in there anymore. Not that I was going to remind him. He frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. You didn't rinse all of me out. I didn't know whether to be glad or sorry. So if I don't have any of your ashes, you can't follow me. He shoved his hands into his pockets, not eager to admit anything. I can drive you nuts while you're on your property, but otherwise, what part of grounding don't you get? So, you had the run of the whole world until No wonder he'd been ticked. The look on his face warned me it would be a good idea to let it drop. Okay, I said, scooting past him and into the kitchen, shivering at the cold spot he created in my doorway. I opened the pull-out drawer next to my sink. I think I have a few grocery bags still left in here. Hopefully that wouldn't insult him. Darned if I knew the etiquette on this. The air chilled 10 degrees as he moved in behind me. Get a backpack, he said. I don't want you getting scared and dropping it, like I had in my kitchen. Listen here, I'm no simpering Southern belle. I straightened, shocking us both when I stood up right in the middle of his chest. It was like stepping out into a freezing cold rain, or standing in a cloud. It felt cold, wet, and terribly uncomfortable, like I'd invaded his personal space in the worst possible way. Each of us froze for a moment, then he shot backward and I shuddered. Sorry, I said, patting myself down to get rid of the watery, chilled feeling of him, even if, as I tried hard not to make it look like I was wiping him away. I needn't have bothered. He wasn't looking at me. He huddled in the corner of my kitchen against the ceiling, clear on the other side of the room. Are you trying to make this worse? He demanded, as if it were my sole purpose in this life to torture him in the next. It was an honest mistake, I said, quickly searching for anything else to say, that wouldn't make us both feel like 10 miles of bad road. The rough, tough gangster looked almost frightened up there above my empty mug rack. So I did what my mother's mother before her most likely would have done. I changed the subject. I realized a bag that zips closed would be a better choice for your urn, I said, trying to act as casual as possible. But I don't have one. My backpack was a gift from my ex, and he took it when he left. Because Beau really needed a pink leopard and print JanSport with double-zip pockets. Frankie's long face set into a scowl. I used to shoot people for less, he muttered to himself. Yes, well, we all had our crosses to bear. I grabbed a hemp grocery sack and shook out a few lingering onion skins into the sink. Then I retrieved Frankie's urn. I tipped it inside and dared him to say another word about it. He didn't. I grabbed a dish towel and swiped up the spilled water before placing the rosebud on the counter. It's not like I had another vase. All right, then, I said, holding the door open for him. Might as well get to finding that hidden cache. I prided myself on being practical. We didn't have all night. Frankie slid down, his shoulders hunched, and he deliberately snubbed me by walking through the wall to get out to the porch. I sighed. It didn't matter. I used the door and closed it behind me, not bothering with the lock. I can't believe you thought my urn had sexy pictures, he grouched as we started down the steps. The polite thing would be to let it go, but if I didn't stand up to the man, he was going to think he could walk all over me. How can you blame me? I asked, catching him out of the corner of my eye. I mean, truly. There was a girl and a boy dancing the tango, he snapped. I suppose that's one way to look at it. He let out a regretful sigh. I used to love to dance. Well, what about the extra boy? I asked. He gave me the kind of slant look that suggested I was crazy. He's playing a custom-made, highly decorative bandoneon with ivory inlaid handles and feather accents from Argentina, he added, as if that made a difference. I pulled the car keys out of my pocket. We thought it was a goat. My wingman, Suds, carved that. He barked. It took him a week. Maybe Suds should have spent less time stealing, more time practicing art. I barely said it. Frankie heard me anyway. Can you think of any other way to insult me? I thought you outdid yourself when you dumped my ashes on your rose bushes. But you keep surprising me. We reached my car on the side drive, a 1978 avocado green Cadillac, handed down from my grandmother. Good thing it was worthless, or I would have had to sell it. You really aren't going to let that drop, are you? I asked, opening my door. No, he said. He shimmered out of view and then reappeared in my passenger seat. Neat trick. I'm more of the Avenger type, he said, leaning back against the worn upholstery. Great. I slid in next to him and started the engine, a vengeful ghost. He shook his head as I started up the engine. You don't know the half of it. Sweetheart. Chapter 3. My car set to rattling before we even started hitting the bumps at the end of my street. Frankie was polite enough not to mention it, or maybe my car performed about even with the 1920s jalopy. We took a left and then followed a roll of Route 7 until we came up on the main road that led into town. I steered that way without even thinking until Frankie piped up. "Whoa," he said, as if everybody didn't drive a little fast off Route 7. "Hang right." He pointed to a narrow asphalt road that disappeared into the underbrush. "You've got to be kidding." I hit the brakes, forcing the Cadillac to lurch to a stop. The dim dashboard lights made the ghost look watery in the moonless night. He had his direction straight. Maisie lived out east, past the civilized part of town. But there were nicer ways to get there, ones that didn't include a barely there road through the woods. Besides, I'd been down there 3 years ago, before I had more sense. There's nothing that way but Johnson's Cave. We didn't need to be wandering along dark, deserted back roads, even if he did think he knew where we were headed. "Trust me," he said, settling in, spreading his arms over the back of the seat. Had the man forgotten I'd only met him tonight? Still, this whole mission had been his idea. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to do as he asked, even if it annoyed the spit out of me. I clicked on my brights and made a right onto the uneven asphalt. My tank of a car lurched and every bolt shook as we tested the limits of my decades-old suspension system. Frankie cursed under his breath. "Don't start," I shot back, daring him to make this more difficult as branches from the bushes on either side of the road scraped against the sides of my car. "You drive like a woman," he said, flinching as the longer branch caught my windshield wiper and dragged the arm of it up before the stubborn old thing snapped back. "You led me this way," I said, cringing as we bottomed out and something hard and crunchy scraped the undercarriage of my car. "So stop being sexist." He let out a choked sound, but I wasn't about to take my eyes off the road, what little there was of it. "I'm not the one who keeps bringing up sex." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I began, and then it hit me. He didn't know he was being sexist. He didn't even know what that meant. How to explain? Oh, Lordy. I didn't mean sex. I meant, "Stop it. I'm not listening to another word," he said. Like he was my father or something. "First, you think there's a girl and a boy and a goat on my urn, and now this. You might like to skate around, but I can't do that no more." Sweet heaven. "I'm not coming on to you." I didn't even know how to explain. "Forget it." "Gladly," he muttered. I kept driving. "If it makes you feel any better, it's the first time I've ever had a conversation like this," I told him. Certainly hoped it would be the last. "You're making it worse," Frankie said, his voice rising. "Fine, you have my apology." I'd never met anyone who necessitated more subject changes. Frankly, I was losing patience for it, especially when we were running around Hell's half acre because of him. The road split in two. The path to the right led down to Johnson's Cave. A thick chain stretched over the entrance, blocking that wider, easier route. We took the other road, the one less traveled. Lord help us. I blew out of breath. I should turn around right now. I would have if I could have found anywhere to do it. I had a feeling we missed our chance. "You thinking of backing out?" Frankie demanded. "Yes," I said, sawing as I spotted Bambi's mom in the woods. I furrowed my brow, hoping the doe didn't dart out in front of my tank on wheels. "I told you I'm not one for trespassing." "Me neither," he grumbled. "Stealing's way more fun." "No wonder somebody shot you between the eyes." Like I haven't heard that one from every dead smartass in the last 90 years. He pointed to a shadow up on our left. "Turn there." I slowed and took another hard left onto a road that was even narrower than the one we'd been on. I'd have to be careful not to get lost. Until tonight, I thought I knew every inch of Sugarland. This forgotten part of town was quiet, creepy. This may be a shortcut, but it's a dumb way to go. In fact, I'd have been worried the ghost was luring me somewhere shady if he hadn't been so wigged out by touching me. Or maybe that was an act. I shot him a glance. He caught me at it and raised his brows. Felt like we were entering another world as the road opened up and I caught sight of an abandoned gas station. The sign read Tennessee Oil. My headlights caught rusted pumps under an old tin awning. The narrow windows of the building at the back were dark and broken. "I've heard of this place," I said. "I just never seen it." "It's the land that time forgot," Frankie said, a little melodramatic for my taste. "Don't tease." I was already a little freaked out. Farther down, I spotted an old diner, its white tile exterior chipping and streaked with graffiti. its parking lot all but lost to weeds. The boys in high school used to dare each other to come out here, I said. I'd been too scared. Now I realized it was sad, too. I read stories about disappearing rural towns, but never thought mine would be included. Unincorporated, Frankie said with a spotty police presence. Perfect spot for me and my associates back in the day. Frankie watched out the front window with a faraway look. He turned as we passed a lump of a building completely overtaken by bushes and trees. The turn past Dolly's place, he murmured before clearing his throat. Up here, he said as we reached a lonely crossroad. Right. I did as he instructed, glad to realize we'd left the ghost town behind. No doubt someone had loved that place a long time ago, like I love Sugarland now. But the relic of a town didn't feel right. Maybe I was merely unsettled about how easy it was to lose a home, a road, an entire community. We drove until the road went from asphalt to dirt. Kill your lights, he ordered. Dang it, Frankie, I muttered, but I did as he asked. Now we were really asking to hit something. Drive straight, the ghost said quietly as we crunched over dry ground. Off in the distance I saw a single porch light. That's Macy's house, isn't it? I murmured. We were in about the right place for it, although I couldn't see the rest of her 1940s-style bungalow. The place was too dark. Frankie straightened in his seat. Follow my lead. Sneaking's one of the things I do best. He shot me a dark look. Stop the car. He sounded like we were about to rob a bank or something. I didn't like it. I never should have agreed to this, I muttered as I ground the car to a halt. The engine clicked and protested as I shut it down. Frankie adjusted the Panama hat low over his eyes. The widow's been looking in the ground. That's the wrong place. He shot me a grin. Oscar hid the cash in the old family homestead. You mean the haunted house on the hill? I shot back. We told stories about the old Hatcher place, an abandoned Civil War-era two-story, where candles still glowed in the upstairs window, and the ghost of jilted Josephine threw rocks at people. Word had it she'd pitched her lover headfirst out of her window before she'd hung herself. The widow Maisie hadn't let anyone near the place in 40 years, and I didn't blame her. I'm not going in there. Frankie shot me a dry look. You'd rather take your skunk and live in an apartment by the railroad tracks. That's not fair. He disappeared from the seat next to me and materialized about 10 yards ahead. Criminy. I popped open the locks, grabbed the bag with the urn, and hurried after him. Can't we discuss this like rational human beings? I hissed. It was dark and freaky, and he'd better not leave me alone. I thought you said you couldn't go anywhere. As if determined to prove me wrong, he disappeared completely, abandoning me in the darkness. It was colder than it should have been, blacker. A blood-curdling cry rose up from the woods to my right, and a twisting hollow fear settled into my chest. I didn't go far, Frankie said right up against my ear. If I'd had a heart condition, that whisper would have been the end of me. Stop it. Relax, he said, shimmering into view. I'm just messing with you. I shot him my dirtiest look. Have you heard the stories of jilted Josephine? No, he said, focus on the prize. He motioned me forward. I took a few tentative steps. A dark mass loomed up ahead, surrounded by an overgrowth of woods. Josephine's lair, no doubt. This time Frankie stuck close. This Josephine dame lives up there, and she's a little squirrely. That's good for us. Most folks don't like that, so they won't have come close to the loot. We, on the other hand, don't care. We need the cash. I stopped. I thought I was up for this, but I had my limits. I'm not going to sneak into a haunted house. He turned back to me surprised. What, are you afraid of ghosts? I planted my hands on my hips. I don't like them very much. He broke into a grin. It's only 'cause you met me. Heavens to Betsy, this was different and he knew it. He also knew I didn't have a choice. You have to admit this is creepy. It wasn't merely the pitch-black middle of nowhere spooky forest. I pointed to the shadows of the towering oaks surrounding us. Do you see those trees? They have no leaves. I know it's almost October, but still, nothing. They're all gnarled and dead. You done? Frankie asked, completely unaffected from my outburst. I need my flashlight, I gritted out, fumbling for the one on my keychain. It would be great if you could go in by yourself, I added, with just a hint of desperation. He could find it as well as I could. Maybe. It takes a lot of energy to move anything on your plane, he said, much less do a full-out search. Don't you know anything? Not about this, I said, flipping on my light. The watery beam spilled down onto the path in front of me. Frankie stared out into the darkness, lost in thought. If I could, I would have taken the cash already. His brow furrowed. Not that I could have spent it. More like a force of habit. He turned his back and began gliding toward the cabin. Wait up, I said, chasing after him. I had a hard time following the path, and my kids didn't offer great traction, but I didn't dare fall too far behind. I kept as close as I could to Frankie. He was the least creepy thing here. How messed up was that? The closer we got, the more I wanted to turn back. Seeing the house straight ahead didn't help. The rough wooden boards looked like they'd been pieced together with nail spit and not much else. Darkened windows gazed out from both stories, and the front door leaned drunkenly on its hinges. Weeds invaded the path, winding around my ankles. The entire property felt dark, wrong, like it lay in wait for me to enter and make a mistake. How far in do I have to go? I whispered to Frankie. Maybe Oscar hid the money by the front door or something. He glanced up at the house. Let's get inside before we worry about that. As he spoke, a candle sputtered to life in the upstairs window. I would have screamed if I hadn't been too busy trying not to fall. Don't let that bother you, Frankie said. The light flickered even as I stood there, scared out of my wits. There is a ghost up there, I said, as loud as I dared. It's our house, Frankie said simply. Right. A hysterical giggle threatened to burst from me. I could relate to that. If I lost my nerve now, I was going to lose my house tomorrow. Or if not tomorrow, soon. Josephine was nothing but a ghost, a spirit, a remnant from another age, like Frankie. He hadn't harmed me, and I'd actually done something to tick him off. I forced myself to take one step forward, then another, until I made it to the front door and touched my fingers to the latch. What do I do when I get inside? Follow your gut, Frankie said. My gut told me to run, but I knew I could do this. I had to do this, and so I slipped inside,